90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
Russia, if you're listening.
Talk show, random, political, outrageous, philosophical, analytical, passionate, sunsets, roadkill cooking tips, open-minded, swordsman, bent, resolute, chocolate, bushwhacker, belt buckles, investigative, companion, fearless. Call in, piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. It's the Carrie Harrison Files.
And it is the Carrie Harrison Files. Welcome. Happy Friday. So glad to have you here today. Joined by a couple of cool college students as we expand the possibilities here and jump straight into activism. They're just watching today, but you're going to learn more and hear more about them down the road. Well, we're also live streaming right now on YouTube. You can simply go to Carrie Harrison YouTube. Just Google it and subscribe so we can stay connected when you show up at your destination. And then switch over to the stream on your phone at the Carrie Harrison YouTube channel, which you can easily find at kpfk.net. Just go to kpfk.net. Well, coming up, we're going to go live to Germany. We're going to speak with Jan Tussing of German Public Radio. He's going to give us the inside skinny on the recent win of the emerging Nazi Party in today's Germany. I don't even have to repeat that, do I? And also what appears to be an identical twin expanding across our own government. And that's coming up at the bottom of the hour. But first, let's blow a kiss to democracy, that fragile, battered thing held together by the desperate hope that facts still matter and that the loudest voice in the room isn't always the most unhinged. But here we are, in the age of the new court scribes, where the jesters get front row seats in the palace and call themselves journalists. The so-called new media isn't reporting so much as genuflecting. It's regurgitating the talking points of the powers that be like a well-trained parrot, minus the charm. Let's highlight one such creature, a Mr. Jack Posobiec, once an internet clown, barking about satanic pizza parlors run by Hillary Clinton. He now finds himself rubbing elbows with cabinet ministers, striding down the halls of power, as though he didn't build his career in the sewer of conspiracy theories. The man couldn't string together a coherent thought without plagiarizing white nationalists. He's now getting invites from the Secretary of Defense. A beautiful moment in the Great Decline. But of course, he's not alone. There's an entire flotilla of sycophants being ushered into the White House press corps room under the sainted banner of new media, a term stretched so thin it now includes Breitbart and influencers whose main qualification is being able to hold a camera steady while yelling, "Legacy media." These sorry bastards who spent years trying to report the news, legacy media, are now being told to sit in the back, or better yet, like the AP, get out entirely, unless they're willing to call the Gulf of Mexico by its new government-approved name, the Gulf of America. And so we have state-sponsored media without the inconvenience of state control. A press corps, or press corps, that doesn't need to be coerced into compliance because they're already eager to grovel and kiss the ring. But is this really new? Or have we just traded one flavor of propaganda for another? Meanwhile, we're going to zoom out the camera and we're going to see Brendan Carr, the newly appointed chair of the Federal Communications Commission, waging a war on the legacy news media and the administration's quest to destroy freedom of the press and the First Amendment. Carr announced an investigation into the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies of Comcast, NBC Universal, and now NBC Universal's MSNBC channel has sucked upward its last remaining testicle and has fired everyone that might require darker makeup to fit their natural skin tone. Well, to help us untangle this media labyrinth, we have with us Anna Merlan, senior reporter at Mother Jones, covering disinformation, technology, and extremism. She was previously a senior reporter at Vice and Gizmodo Media Group, was also on staff at the Village Voice and the Dallas Observer. She's frequently covered conspiracy theories, actual conspiracies, sexual violence, scams, cults, crime, politics, and new religious movements. She's also the author of the book, Republic of Lies, American Conspiracy Theorists and Their Surprising Rise to Power. Her latest in Mother Jones is entitled Meet the New State Media, How the Second Trump Administration Grants Access and Status to Conspiracy Theorists, Propagandists, and Far-Right Influencers. Anna Merlan, glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Was that a big enough introduction for you?
Yeah, wow, that was overwhelming. I'm so old.
I'm so glad you're here today because we're all just like going out of our minds here. You've covered the rise of right-wing media figures gaining legitimacy through proximity to power. How does this guy, Jack Posobiec's trajectory embody this shift?
Well, he's really interesting. He's best known for being a very early promoter of Pizzagate, the conspiracy theory that a Democratic cabal was sexually abusing children in the basement of a pizza parlor that didn't have a basement. And during the first administration, as I wrote, Posobiec was actually granted briefly White House press credentials when he was working at Rebel Media, which is a right-wing Canadian news outlet. And so now he is back. He is once again covering the White House, being sort of granted a very different level of access. He's being invited to accompany Defense Department Secretary Pete Hegseth on his first trip overseas, which he didn't do because he was with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent instead. He was literally in the room when Bessent met with Zelensky of Ukraine. I mean, just this absolutely fascinating rise for someone whose most of his career has been engaging in pretty outre conspiracy theories.
Anna Merlan, when the Trump administration dubs these outlets new media, that we're now seeing limited editions of anybody who actually has, let's just say, historical reference or has read Homer, not probably likely have happened. When the Trump administration dubs these outlets new media, what do you think they actually mean, and why do they need that label?
Right. Essentially, what they're trying to signal here, I mean, pretty clearly and loudly, is that they are done with what they call the legacy or the mainstream media, which hasn't offered the coverage of President Trump that they would prefer. And so they are saying that they are going to prioritize, boost, and reward media outlets that they feel offer, frankly, better coverage. You know, and some of these are bloggers, influencers, people who would be outside the traditional media. Others are very much, by most people's definition, legacy media outlets like Breitbart, which has been around since, I believe, 2007. So essentially, it's just another way to talk about one of President Trump's favorite topics, which is the idea of fake news and the fake news media not giving him the coverage that he feels he deserves.
You know, I think we all remember in our either cursory or unfortunate deep reading of Project 2025, 900 plus pages of gorgeous fascism. That's, if you want to call it by the name that probably best fits. They talked about getting rid of legacy media, getting rid of organized media, getting rid of paid journalists who actually have accountability and responsibility. Even this station, KPFK in Los Angeles, is listed specifically by call letters as one of the, without using the term enemies of state, but quite clearly that's the indicator there. We're looking at grifters, really, who are making these decisions. We're seeing plundering to steal from the president like we've never seen, the likes of which we've never seen before. The idea of going into Fort Knox, where there's some $800 billion, we think, plus of gold at the time when it was closed down. It was like $45 an ounce. Now it's almost $3,000 an ounce. They're going to go in and create a giant sovereign wealth fund, allegedly, basically just selling off the assets. These are grifters. They come and go. What distinguishes a crop of media courtiers? Because that's how you and I find out, through them. Since I don't have access, you might still have access, but a lot of us don't. They're the ones telling us, and they come from previous right-wing movements. Can we trust what they're saying?
I mean, this is a really interesting crop of people because some of them, as I said, don't have traditional journalism credentials at all. Some of them are more in the vein of influencers. And some of them are folks who would describe themselves as journalists. But all of the people who have sort of been given new access to the press briefing room and, to the White House, to Congress, to going on things like congressional trips overseas, it is because they write positively about the Trump agenda and the Trump administration. That is pretty clear. So, regardless of how they would sort of describe themselves or what they see their mission as, it is pretty obvious what the Trump administration is trying to do here, which is saying your access is premised on how you write about us, how you talk about the Trump administration. Of course, we're seeing that play out in a really ugly way with the Associated Press, who are being denied access to the press pool at the White House until they use this term Gulf of America that Donald Trump has decided he wants the Gulf of Mexico to be called.
And of course, Mexico now wants to call the entire United States Mexico Americana. And the French are thinking of Nouvelle France once again, because once upon a time there was Louisiana, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you can only be satirical enough, and then you get smacked in the face and realize that this is actually happening real time here in the land of e pluribus unum, where my ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence, and I feel like I have a certain skin in the game, but I'm no longer invited to the dinner table of my own country because I don't fit a certain uh, whatever that is, whatever that certain thing is. We're talking right now to Anna Merlan, senior reporter of Mother Jones, covering disinformation, technology, and extremism. Previously a senior reporter at Vice, Gizmodo Media Group, frequently covered conspiracy theories, actual conspiracies. I love that part. Sexual violence, scams, cults, crime, politics, and new religious movements. Her latest in Mother Jones is called Meet the New State Media. We're live streaming right now on YouTube. You can simply Google Carrie Harrison YouTube or go to kpfk.net, and you can see how attractive our selection of guests are, which of course we do completely on purpose just to subvert the whole idea of neutrality here. All that joking aside, even though that part was partially true. Some of these so-called journalists have financial ties to dubious backers, from foreign billionaires to election deniers. How much of this is ideological and how much is just a cynical cash grab?
Well, of course, I couldn't possibly say if anybody is being cynical. I'm sure everybody is 100% sincere in what they're doing. However, that being said, at least two of the people in the briefing room, Caroline Leavitt, who's the new press secretary for the White House, and Natalie Winters, who's a correspondent for Steve Bannon's War Room, both took money from backers of a Chinese businessman accused of fraud to write op-eds praising this businessman without disclosing that they had been paid by his backers to do so. We write about this in the piece, but it's a very strange little incident.
You know, we saw Anna Merlan back in the days of Rush Limbaugh, who very cleverly knew that he was grifting his audience. He was a radio guy. He was an entertainer. And he knew that if he kept saying things over and over again, as we know from advertising, if you mention a product 6 times, show a commercial and somebody sees it 6 times, they're going to fall in love with that car. And they're going to probably consider buying that particular car because they've seen it. It's become familiar. It's part of their psyche. It's become a friend in many ways. And Limbaugh didn't initially believe his stuff, but he saw people light up and love him in a way he had never been loved before. Ratings turned into money, money turned into cigars, women, whatever it was that he needed, and he became the rock star of talk radio. And then he started to believe his own stuff, using a perverse syllogism, which is, if it's not true, I wouldn't be this popular and this rich. I'm wondering how much of these folks that are getting into it, they get the grift, but at some point they start believing it, and that's when these kinds of movements tend to grow and attract even more cynical and sinister people. Have you seen that in your research of these kinds of constructs before?
Well, I want to be clear that I'm not calling anybody a grifter. You're welcome to. I believe that everybody's 100% sincere in everything that they're saying, of course. However, I've written about conspiracy theories for years, and this is always the question that comes up. How much do people believe what they're saying and promoting, and how much are they saying and promoting these things because it's in their financial benefit to do so, or it gives them audience or new access to power? And the answer is we don't know, and it doesn't really matter ultimately. these folks are saying things sometimes to enormous audiences without sometimes regard for what the consequences could be. And to me, that's what really matters rather than like what's in their heart or the sort of complex reasons why they might be doing it. Ultimately, this is what they're choosing to do. This is how they're spending their time. You know, we saw that, for instance, with Alex Jones on InfoWars and his promotion of lies and hoaxes about Sandy Hook. Regardless of what he actually believed about Sandy Hook, and his sort of answers about that question of change, he said many, many, many times over that, he believed that this was potentially a hoax, and saying that over and over created real harm to the survivors of Sandy Hook, people who lost their parents and their children in this tragedy. So, regardless of why you say something, it has consequences to say it.
Carrie Harrison with you. This is the Carrie Harrison Files. We are talking to Anna Merlan, senior reporter at Mother Jones, covering disinformation, technology, and extremism. We're talking about her latest called Meet the New State Media in Mother Jones, and looking at this curious collection of handpicked folks while pushing out other people that might have had whole decades of training, cut their teeth. They've actually read the AP style handbook. Not that anyone knows what that is anymore. It's probably a pamphlet from memory. All that to say, hard to know what's true. This was a question 10 years ago. We were all asking each other, where do we find real news? I would tell you, go to Mother Jones. They have always had an impeccable reputation for doing their diligence and bringing forth important news, which is why right now we're having this discussion of the state of media. We have figures like Mike Lindell and Steve Bannon's lackeys getting White House press access. I wonder, Anna Merlan, is there a single journalistic standard left in that room, or is it now just performance art?
Oh, there are plenty of real journalists left in that room. The White House Correspondents Association is still there. They're still doing their best. And they've tried to push back against what has been going on here, mainly the pushing out of the AP, because people recognize that specifically is a really dangerous precedent to set, to say you do not get access to press events, the press pool, the Oval Office, unless you use the terminology that we demand. That is, this is an overused term, but that's Orwellian stuff, right? But it's important to point out, right, that a lot of exclusives, a lot of investigative journalism doesn't happen because you go into the press briefing room, right? But it is important for democracy, for elected officials of a democratic government to get up in front of members of the media and have to answer questions. There's a reason why we've done it this way, and it's because it is part of a free press, a functioning society, and an open democratic discourse. That's why it matters.
I am feeling that during these times when people really want to know what's going on, old school research, old school journalism, old school investigation is going to become really, really sparkly to people, because it's the only place where they're going to find who's doing what and why. And it's not just polished PR and spin, especially when people can tell that 1 and 1 is not 7. Even if they don't have much education, I think we're all sort of sensing that. Hence, I used the G word earlier, which I won't dare say again, certainly not with attribution outside of this show. We're live streaming right now on YouTube. You can simply Google Carrie Harrison YouTube, subscribe so we can stay connected. When you show up at your destination, switch over to the stream on your phone at the Carrie Harrison YouTube channel, where you can also easily find us at kpfk.net. Just go to kpfk.net. And don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter at carrieharrison.com. That's carrieharrison.com. There you're going to get a transcript of this entire show, plus access to clips and stuff we simply cannot do on the radio. And that's our free newsletter, once again, at carrieharrison.com. We're talking to Anna Merlan, and another question, since your beat is really these complicated puck fists and, well, whatever they may or may not be, in my opinion. If one plagiarizes white supremacists, but gets caught and still advances in their career, what does that say about that industry?
Yeah, it's really interesting. You're, of course, referring to Jack Posobiec, who left Rebel Media after it was discovered that he had plagiarized from a figure named Jason Kessler. So, as I wrote in my piece, and as I've thought about a lot, for many people that would have been a defining incident in leaving media. Generally, plagiarism is a death sentence for journalists, but I guess in this new ecosystem, perhaps it's not.
A final question for people that just want to be able to navigate the uncertain shoals of the future. They don't know where to go. Wherever they do turn, that may be mainstream, is now being reduced to Truth Social or Twitter, formerly X, formerly known as Twitter. There is Blue Sky. A lot of people aren't yet quite familiar with that. We still have your publication, still in print, definitely online, articles like yours that help us parse reality from nonsense. What can the average person listening right now, where would you direct them to go to find out what's going on?
There's a lot of great journalism that is happening right now. Obviously, Mother Jones has, in my humble opinion, been doing a good job. Wired has had an incredible series of scoops about what Elon Musk's Doge is doing. Quote unquote legacy publications like the Washington Post, the Guardian, the International Press. I would say that if people are feeling like they are not able to access good information, broaden your media diet, especially in print and magazines and written journalism. There is so much going on. And even if you are finding it overwhelming, even if you're not able to tune into it and read it all regularly, just know that it will be there when you are ready to look for it.
You know, a lot of us have ended up volunteering in our own careers. I sit here today unpaid. If you can imagine such a thing. I used to make a living in radio. It's true. Yes.
Wow.
I had a car and I actually paid the insurance and I had an apartment. I even ran air conditioning in the summer. It was quite the lifestyle, let me tell you.
Wow.
And now in public radio, I volunteer because if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. And we go away and we are in the crosshairs. I've never in my wildest perverse dreams imagined this could actually happen. So just for full transparency, sure, for years in public media, we've got to pay the light bill. We're going away. It was that. But now it's real. Like, for real. Do we have 6 months? Do we have 4 months? Is there a presidential directive that says we are fill in the blank? I imagine when you do stories as you do, Anna Merlan, you do it now at your own peril.
These are difficult times for journalists. These are times when people are increasingly at risk of being targeted in various ways that we hadn't been previously. I think the stakes are really high, and that's why it's so important to keep doing it. Nothing could possibly be better or more beneficial for people in power than for news publications to go away and for people to stop paying attention to what is going on in the world at large. So, the greater the risk is, the more important it is to keep doing it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for the hard work and the heavy lifting that we simply cannot do from here, but you're doing it for us. So I appreciate it very much. We've been talking to Anna Merlan, senior reporter at Mother Jones, covering disinformation, technology, and extremism. Previously a senior reporter at Vice and Gizmodo Media Group. She frequently covered conspiracy theories, actual conspiracies, sexual violence, scams, cults, crime, politics, and new religious movements. Her latest in Mother Jones is called Meet the New State Media. Reminding you, we're also live streaming right now on YouTube. You can simply Google Carrie Harrison YouTube and subscribe so we can stay connected when you show up at your destination. Simply switch over to the stream on your phone at the Carrie Harrison YouTube channel, which you can also easily find at kpfk.net. That's kpfk.net. Coming up, we're going to go live to Germany and speak with Jan Tussing of German Public Radio. He's going to give us the inside skinny on the recent win of the emerging Nazi party in today's Germany and what appears to be an identical twin unfolding like the creature from the Alien movie all across our own government. And that's coming up next.
Uncensored, unexpurgated, and unapologetic. It's the Carrie Harrison Files.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
Here's an important message from the U.S. Med Diabetes Solution Center. If you have diabetes, you know the pain of pricking your fingers. But now, by wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce your pain right away. It's easy to use and helps you make more accurate diabetes treatment decisions. So call us right now to see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no cost. U.S. Med. Better service.